Hey, what is going on, guys? My name's Aiko. Welcome to our very first Apex Legends video. I make videos like this a lot, especially when it comes to aim settings. I upload every single Thursday, sometimes even more, and I also stream on Twitch, so if you're new here, consider subscribing, hanging around, and getting comfortable. So the main thing I want to highlight in today's video is basically the response curves and how they react differently. There's a few different settings we can tweak here. I guess I'll run you guys through these settings here. If you can just copy them if you want. I don't really change a whole lot. I barely have even looked through any of these, besides the more technical aiming settings. So I play with an Elite controller. It has 4 paddles. I don't change my button layout because of that. However, use what you're comfortable with and use what you think is more helpful to you. These are my other settings. I haven't really changed a whole lot. For the sensitivity, I play with 3, sometimes F4, and the ADS sensitivity, I have it same. When it comes to finding the best sensitivity for you, keep in mind that first-person shooter games, you know, most of your aim adjustments are gonna be within the 90-degree to 45-degree turn radius. Sometimes you're gonna do a whole 180, but most of the time you're not gonna be finding yourself doing a full 360 in a first-person shooter. You know, maybe you're doing a trick shot or something like that, but we're not talking about that stuff. Most of the time it's gonna be between 45 to 90 degrees. Sometimes you're gonna be doing 180s, so with that being said, I encourage you guys to just do like 90-degree turns, maybe a little bit more, and just practice turning and trying to land your crosshair on the target. And if you kind of overshoot it, say you want to be aiming at this target and you spin and you overshoot it and land over here, maybe your sensitivity is a little too high, and vice versa. If you're spinning and trying to hit that target on the end and you stop too soon, maybe your sensitivity is a little too slow for you. So just keep that in mind. You're going to be doing a lot of small adjustments in your aim in first-person shooters, and you're really not going to be doing big, massive 180, 360 type things. Just practice kind of like getting your fine aim down with it, and you're going to find the right sensitivity for you. Moving on, I do have my dead zones set to small, just because a large dead zone can oftentimes mean that you're pushing your thumbstick a lot more before the game actually recognizes that, hey, the player's trying to turn their screen. Hope that made sense. If you don't know what dead zones are and you play on console, you're probably doing it wrong. Like I said, the biggest things we're gonna highlight today are the response curves or the aim techniques. I'm gonna be using both of those terms as synonyms for each other. I'm gonna get some graphs and images on the screen as well as my controller camera so you can see what I'm doing to help clearly define in detail what each of these do, so that you can determine what's best for you. TLDR, I play with Classic, and you should stay on Classic. But if you want to see if any of these will work better for you, then, you know, keep watching the video. So the first thing we're going to do is hop into Classic. I'm going to show you gameplay, show you the graph, and then after you've seen the actual visual image of the graph and stuff like that, we're going to show it in the gameplay as well. So it's going to be very, very clear. It's going to get a little mathematical, but don't fret. We're going to keep it really simple. So the first one we have is Classic, and I'm going to show you what that looks like with the controller camera here. Control Freak just released their new Battle Royale Nightfall thumbsticks, and that's what I have on my aim stick right now. It's this black, taller thumbstick. They just snap onto your existing thumbsticks, and because of the added height, you get better leverage and better comfort and a larger range of motion. And when you have that, it makes making smaller adjustments precisely a lot easier when it comes to your aim. If you don't already use control freaks on your thumbsticks, I usually just use them on the right one only. I don't need one on the left one. And that's nice because I can just use the extra one that they give you as a spare whenever the right one decides to go out. So if you don't use control freaks, I highly recommend it. Hop over to the website. There's a link in the description below. I am affiliated with them, so you can use my code IKABOO for 10% off, which is really helpful as well. So keep in mind that we're on the Classic response curve as we leave this dead zone here. So Classic is your good, happy medium, jack of all trades. So we're gonna go really, really slow, and, you know, dizzy warning, we're gonna be doing a lot of spinning in this video, so dizzy warning. We're gonna come really slow outside of the dead zone, and we're just gonna creep our way up all the way to maximum speed there. It's really a response curve of no surprises. It just keeps spinning all the way to maximum speed. And then we're going to release slowly and go back to the dead zone. Slow, 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 all the way until we stop. Let me show you what that looks like on a graph, if that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Now, ignore the numbers on the graph here, like the sensitivity and stuff like that. These are all references from a different game. These are not pulled from Apex. So don't think that. However, these graphs do closely represent kind of what's happening here. So 0 is our dead zone in this graph here, and then as you can see, we very slowly and gradually come out of that dead zone, which is why it has a nice feel, because it's not too abrupt. You don't come out of the dead zone and just start shooting up until maximum speed. It's like a nice curved, line all the way up till we get maximum speed. It doesn't really matter which line we're talking about here, it just kind of matters like the shape of the line. So hopping back to the gameplay, now that you know how it kind of looks, you're just gonna come out of the dead zone. It's gonna be that nice even curve outside of the dead zone all the way until we get faster and faster and faster. Now I'm gonna highlight what each of these curves do well and what each of them do poorly. What this curve does well is it feels like Call of Duty, or it feels at least the closest thing that we can get to Call of Duty. And Call of Duty is the goal for a lot of first-person shooters because it feels so fluid. It doesn't really do anything poorly. The other curves do have pros and cons. This one doesn't really have a con. It's just, it is what it is. It's a jack of all trades, master of none. And it's the one I play with, so it's the one I recommend, honestly. The next one we're going to highlight is the steady response curve. Now, this is a lot like Classic, however, that slow speed coming out of the dead zone lingers for a lot longer, and the high speed comes in towards the end of our thumbstick range. So let me just show you that. We're just going to start coming out of the dead zone really, really slow, and then it's going to stay slow for a while. We're going to increase speed, but we're still in that slow zone for sure. Until the very end of the range of the thumbstick do we finally start to pick up speed. Now let me show you what that looks like on the graph. So it's a lot similar to Classic, except you can see that it's a lot flatter. Not until about halfway do we finally start getting some speed. So it's very, very slow. As you can see on the circle on the right side of the screen, there's a lot more of that green color, green-yellow color, because it's a lot slower for a lot longer. So now that you know what it looks like on the graph, I'll show it to you one more time. I'll do it a little bit faster this time. So we're just slow, we're still slow. And then we're like halfway. We're pushing our thumbstick about halfway now. And then finally we start to get more speed towards the very end of our range. But what this technique is good for is range. So because we have that slowed speed coming out of the dead zone for a lot longer amount of time, it's a lot easier to make fine adjustments to your aim, because if you accidentally touch the thumbstick too much, this aim technique doesn't punish you for that. There's a lot more leeway when it comes to making small adjustments, and that's what I think this technique does the best, is it's range gunfights and making small adjustments precisely. Now what it doesn't do very well is kind of more close range, because when you start to move back and forth really, really fast, it starts to feel like you're moving your thumbstick a lot more than you should for it to actually recognize what inputs you're giving it. Kind of feels like delayed a little bit, and it feels a little sluggish. That's where it shines and where it doesn't shine. The next one we have is fine aim. Fine aim is specialized for small, gradual adjustments. Fine aim looks really bad. It kind of looks like dual zone on Overwatch. So let me just show you what it looks like on the screen first, and then I'll show you what the aim feels like. So we're gonna come out of the dead zone, and it's gonna be very smooth. And then it's gonna keep picking up speed a little bit, and then we're kind of at our max speed for this section of the thumbstick. It's really, really weird. Now, as you can see, like, I'm gonna move my thumbstick left and right, and you can see my speed isn't changing at all. It's because my thumbstick's in this certain range within the curve that doesn't change speed, because it has two zones almost. And then finally, we're gonna hit that second high speed area of the thumbstick. Let me show you right here. Like, that's a crazy change. It's not a gradual change at all. It's very... Let me show you what that looks like in the graph. I would say we're gonna reference this red line here for this one. So it's kind of like you come out of the dead zone and you do kind of increase your speed, but there is this section where you don't really notice much of a speed change. And then out of nowhere, you hit this change where you're at maximum speed. Let me show you back in the game here one more time. So it's kind of like you come out of the dead zone, and then all of a sudden you're still at the same speed, even though you're moving the thumbstick more and more. And then all of a sudden you hit this second section that gives you that high speed thing, that high speed change there. It's really shitty. Now, what is an aim technique like this good for? It's really good for tracking, I would say. It's good for tracking in the sense that you're kind of going the same speed as a moving target. And no matter how much you move your thumbstick, you're gonna be going that same rate because the inputs in the response curve aren't changing, even though you might be moving your thumbstick a little more or a little bit less. So it's good for tracking, and it is kind of good for doing 360s like a PC player, because once you hit that outer edge of high speed, like, you get to turn around a lot faster. So that's kind of nice. However, it feels really wonky. It's not consistent at all. I wouldn't recommend it because why would you not want your thumbstick to match where your screen is going? That doesn't make sense to me. Moving on, we're going to the high velocity response curve. Now let me show you what that one looks like. That high velocity is kind of like the opposite of steady. Let me show you. Coming out of the dead zone is really jumpy. Like, we can't really get it to go very slow, and very, very quickly, I'm hardly even touching my thumbstick. We're at a very high speed, all the way till maximum speed there. So let me show you just kind of, like, oh my god, that's terrible. And if you play with the small dead zone, it just makes it even worse. So let me show you what that looks like in the graph. So you can see right away, coming out of the dead zone here, we have a little bit of an ease into it. However, right away, we're getting hit with this big gust of speed. As you can see on the little circle image on the right, there's not a lot of green color or yellow color at all, because basically, as soon as you leave the dead zone, there's a lot of velocity, a lot of speed happening. So again, I'll just show you, no inputs happening right now, but as soon as we kind of touch the thumbstick, it starts to jump really fast. Like, that's a very high speed to come out of the dead zone with. So it makes aiming feel so jumpy, so jittery. The slightest touch sends this thing flying. What high velocity is good for is maybe getting a fast PC feel. If you're about having a very high sensitivity, then maybe this is what you want to go with. However, it's really, really bad for making fine adjustments to your aim at range, especially. Finally, the last one we have is linear. Let me hide my face here so you can kind of read it better. Raw input recommended if you're using a wireless, an elite wireless controller with customized inputs. What that means is this here. So coming out of the dead zone, it's gonna, have a little bit more speed because it's linear. And this is like a perfect 1-to-1 ratio all the way up to maximum speed. It actually seems like it's gonna be a good aim technique, but let me show you why it's not. This is what the linear line looks like. Coming out of the dead zone, you basically have no ease in. So as soon as you touch that thumbstick, you're going at a speed that you might not expect. There's no curve to it like the other aim techniques. It's just instantly you're getting inputs all the way until you're at maximum speed. Now, what Apex is saying by you should use this if you use custom elite controller settings is this here. So the elite controller you can see it has curves of its own that you can adjust. So obviously, if you have custom ones, you don't really want to have, your custom elite controller settings on top of what the game is giving you for their curves. Then in that case, you have like double curves happening, and it's kind of weird. So that's why if you're using custom ones, that's why you should stick to linear in-game, because linear is just a straight line. It doesn't have any curves happening. It's just blunt. So in that case, it is kind of nice. You might be able to use the delayed curve for your elite controller. With linear, that kind of gives it a smooth, out of dead zone feeling. But just like in Overwatch, coming out of the dead zone is a little too jumpy. It's almost like high velocity. It could be a good response curve, but it's just not. That's why I just recommend sticking to classic. That's the one thing about Apex that kind of sucks, is they give us the options to change our curves, but they don't give us the full customization like Overwatch does. They don't have individual sliders for all the little things that we could tweak with it. So I don't even know why this game has different response curves in that regard, because if we can't fine tune it, then we're really limited to what they give us. And what they give us is not gonna work for everybody. That's why, at the end of the day, stick to classic. That's, the bottom line here. You can play other ones if you're more comfortable, because that's what aim settings are. They're preference. They're all preference. However, I'm here to explain things to you guys, and I'm here to give you a guideline, and you guys can go from there. I upload every single Thursday, and I stream to Twitch as well. So if you're new here, consider subscribing so I can see you again next week. Check out the Battle Royale Control Freak thumbsticks if you really want to, improve your aim. If you've never used them before, definitely check them out. Link below, code IKEABLE for 10% off. I'll see you guys in the next new video. My name's Aiko. Peace.